My name is John and I'm at Paint School on Instagram. I've done over $15 million in paint jobs and I'm based out of Huntington Beach, California. Aaron is at Alpha Painting on Instagram. He's managed huge commercial projects with impossible timelines and now is a few years into building his own operation out of Branson, Missouri.
And you should probably check out our full process videos on YouTube because they're pretty badass.
Our point in doing this podcast is to put our 40 plus years of combined experience to the test. We've seen a decline in the industry, and while I think it's a bit arrogant to think we can change it, we're giving it a shot. Listen up and let us know what you think. This is Paint Sniffer Podcast. All right, so these questions are coming from the winners of the little contest we had for the Graco guns. The one that got voted on first place was from at Tim_Seaton_painting. Second place was at McGuire Painting. All right, so from Tim Seaton, what are some of your biggest horror story loser jobs? What did you take away from it? And what are some of your favorite insanely profitable jobs? We'll go with those first, and then if we have time, we'll go to what makes a high quality company, because that could probably be an episode all on its own.
Yeah.
So for me, I've got horror story loser jobs. I got quite a few, actually, unfortunately, but I learned a lot of lessons from them. One big one that really stands out to me, and I think I've talked to you a little bit about this. We had a big commercial project, and it was all exterior, 3-story building. We had 2 boom lifts out there. I had a whole plan set up, to be able to kind of move through this pretty quickly. And, it's a parking lot full of cars. We had to kind of orchestrate where traffic goes on which days and all that. So during our sampling phase in the beginning, we had my Dunn Edwards sales rep came out, Rust-Oleum rep came out, and they all put together a spec for the finish on this place. And their spec was like, soup to nuts, like how to clean it properly, dry time for primers, which primers to use, dry time for finishes in between coats, how to prep in between coats, the whole deal. This building was like smooth metal panels, so it's like the panels were 3 feet by 15 feet. And so if you're standing on the ground, you could spray a whole panel out, no problem, without having to stop in the middle of it. But on a boom lift, we had to either use a 6-foot pole to be able to get all the way through. And even that was tight. You're spraying off on the far left side and off on the far right side. So you couldn't get like a nice even finish all the way through. So we ended up during our testing phase getting overlap marks on panels, and the sheen was showing differently. So the first product we used on it for the spec was a Deft coating. It was a 2-part acrylic urethane. So we had a 2-part epoxy primer from Rust-Oleum. I think it's SC9100, I think was the product. So 2-part epoxy primer, and then the 2-part Deft 36 series finish. And that shit's like $130 a gallon, so it was expensive. We had one side of the building where there was a vacant lot on the side. So that was the obvious, like, first run. We had like maybe 200 feet of run that we could do all from that dirt side. So it didn't affect any cars. We didn't have to go through the grass area, anything like that. So the material on that one side of the building was like $7,000. And we get the whole thing knocked out. So this is like, they have strips of glass in between the panels. So masking, you're just basically masking off rectangular glass all the way through. There's metal panels below, metal panels above the glass, another glass section, and another metal section. So the masking was pretty easy, pretty straightforward from the booms. And so we get this whole side sprayed, and we're getting flashing spots on the overlap marks, and we're getting a haziness like in round areas in the middle of panels. So we had the Deft rep out. He's like, just let it dry. It'll dry out fine, give it a couple days. So I'm checking on this thing like every day. I'm like driving over there, checking it, seeing if it's dried nice or not. Because it's a big project. It's like $90,000 project. It's probably the biggest one I did at the time. Um, and so, it comes out again 3 days later. It's like, oh, let's give it a week. And the whole time I've got fucking two booms on the job. So I'm paying like 125 bucks a day to have them just sit there in the dirt field. So these booms are just sitting there the whole time. Every day I'm like, dude, we got to like get this thing figured out. So a week goes by. Um, None of it's, it got a little better, maybe 10% better, but still no way I could pass it on this. Um, and so Don Edwards rep, and the building had a maintenance engineer, so that guy was meeting us out there too. Um, and so we all had a meeting, and the decision was to go to a different product. It's like I don't think this is going to work. We can't get good finishes corner to corner. And we had done like we masked off panels next to it, so we could just spray one panel at a time all the way through to try to keep a nice wet edge. But we're still getting the hazing in the middle of it. So we ended up switching products. We went to this water-based finish, still doing the two-part epoxy primer. And all this shit had to be like wiped down with acetone before we put it on. Once we put the two-part epoxy primer on, it had to be finished within, I think it was 2 days. If we went to the third day, we'd have to reprime it because then our paint won't stick to the primer anymore. So switched to a new product, and that one worked. So we did the whole side, got the whole side all knocked out. Once we got the product working, then it was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we were done. We're out of there as a piece of cake. Um, but I spent, maybe 3 weeks testing products. I spent 2 weeks trying to get the first product to work. So 3 weeks to get our process nailed down. We have a product that looks good enough. So that whole time those booms are sitting there and just racking up money. And it was like as soon as we have a system that works, it's go time. So I couldn't just pull the booms off because I was thinking like any day, like today could be the day, tomorrow could be the day. So we had those booms sitting there for like 3 weeks, not any work being done, just testing. Um, and then on one side of the building, there was a street side, and then on the opposite side was a parking lot. So 50 cars in there or whatever. When we were doing the epoxy primer on the street side, that shit was flying over the building and landing on cars on the other side.
Nice.
So we ended up having to detail about $3,500 worth of cars.
Yeah.
It's a fucking nightmare. So on that project, all the testing and everything I was doing by myself. I wasn't having my guys do it, and so I would be there like I'd work whatever job we're working on, and then I'd go there at like 3 o'clock and test until like 7 p.m. Just testing like, let me try a different sprayer, let me try a shorter line, let me try a longer line, extension pull, no extension pull, all kinds of different ways to try to make the first product work. And then finally we got through it, and I don't think I technically lost any money, but I didn't make shit on that job, and I should
Yeah.
have made like 30 grand. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah. My I haven't had much experience with wiping out vehicles,
Yeah,
Um
that's good.
I've always been super careful, the weather always changes here so much, like you're having to watch, humidity. You can't ever trust what the weather says, so you're always having to watch the Doppler radar, and with all the lakes we have around us, you got to kind of
Oh yeah,
guesstimate, exactly how you're going to react to shit. So you're always paying attention to like wind direction and temperature, moisture, all that stuff. So um my intro into the last commercial company I ran logistics for was doing a night shift. Nobody else would do it. We were traveling, painting exteriors of Walmarts in the winter. So I don't know if you're. My boss had this. So I first started like, um, helping them kind of reorganize the logistics on like 40 houses they were doing. I did that, and then I jumped into. He was having a problem with another painter that was having a problem with an exterior oil based conflex. So he sent me there to figure out what the problem was. His product was congealing, and I think he was power rolling at the time. But so I went there And this guy's like, you know, just another one of those fucking painters that thinks they know what they're doing and stuff. And I show up and he knows that I'm, something weird's going on, and the boss had kind of just told him, well, he's here to get it all figured out and stuff. So I'm like talking with the dude. I have him show me his whole process and what are you doing. For starters, he was backing the pump in MEK, and I'm sitting there thinking like, dude, that's gonna corrode your packings and stuff. Like, are you contaminating the product with MEK? Is that why you're congealing? And I'm like, what are you reducing it with? And he's like, he goes, naphtha. I'm like, okay, well, so does this product reduce with naphtha? I pull all the
Yeah.
specs on the product, I read up on it. I'm like, dude, you're missing a label on it. Are you sure this is naphtha? And I look it up, and I pull all the sales records from all the purchases for that job, and he had a 5-gallon bucket of VMNP naphtha, and the product reduced with high flash aromatic naphtha. So that ended up being what was causing the congealing issues. And I took all that info to the boss, and he got pissed and fired that dude. And he's like, well, you're gonna go ahead and do this job. And it was going into winter, so the thing with that product was had a low temp of 19 degrees. So I mean, I was literally there, like I had myself and a ground man, and I was towing towing behind. I'd get our setup in the back of the truck, running a gas pump and 200 foot of hose, and I drive the truck around the building to spray the building. And I had like those road lights and shit,
Yeah.
gas powered road lights. I'd have those just towed behind the truck, and my ground man would position the lights while I was spraying and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, we push that product every bit, dude. 17, 19 degrees on a fucking night shift doing the outside of Walmarts and shit. It was a fucking
Jeez.
nightmare. But um then we from there, his other his lead guy was doing a Walmart in Oklahoma, and come to find out they were going to get fired. So um they had like a drop dead date. So I'm like, once I had all that shit complete, I had to um finish up a job that I was on in my area, and then I had to drive an hour to Springfield to do punch on another job, back to where I live, back to Springfield to load up, and then back, and then I had to drive to Oklahoma, paint the whole front of a fucking Walmart to save his lead guy's ass, color breaks and all, by myself, and
Jeez.
then back to Springfield to unload, and then back home. It ended up being like a 5 day for me,
Oh
and
man.
yeah, it was fucking insane. I was drinking like monsters and shit, dude. And I broke out. I drank so many monsters, I broke out in a rash and shit. But but in terms of dude, I could go on forever. Like, what do you consider losing? Like falling 4 stories, and fucking destroying your body, or running a fucking um just a large commercial project that doesn't come out well, or losing $1,000 on a residential job. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think on these, like so for me, I mostly do residential. I do some commercial, but it's maybe like, I don't know, 10 to 20% of my business. Um, so like I have had plenty of jobs where it would have been better if we just stayed home. It's like I got to come out of pocket, even on little
yeah,
jobs. It's like that little job cost me $400. When all is said and done, when I crunch the numbers, it's like I paid $400 to paint that person's whatever interior. It's like fuck, dude. That not only did I not make money, but I had to come out of my pocket to do their job. Like that's happened a lot to me. Um, we had a project that was all interior. It's like one of these old houses in Long Beach. That's probably the older homes that we have around here. And it was all smooth walls everywhere. Well, mostly smooth walls, but they wanted to skim coat everything. And so it was like a $25,000 job. It's good size, not a big house, but three or four bedrooms, something like that. All small rooms, but still three or four rooms where you're doing ceiling walls. Um, we didn't do any closets, and then they're also living there. So they're living in there. They have two small kids, and we had to be like quiet around nap time for the kids, and then we had to be out of the kids' rooms every day. So we're going in there and like masking off early. Um, they would allow us to work through nap time in the kids' rooms, but we had to be quiet. And then we had to be out of there at the end of the day, cleaned up and out of there. So every day that we're working in those rooms, we're masking off. In the morning, we're working, we're cleaning up, pulling off, back in the next day. And so we were trying to rush some of the stuff, trying to get in and out of some of those rooms. These people were very particular. And so if we had a little nick or anything like that, it's like patch it again, you know? Uh, and we just ate up so many extra hours doing all that stuff, going back and forth, masking, unmasking, so much more than I anticipated. And that job, it's a while back, but it was probably, I don't know, like three or $4,000 loss. Just I just underdid
Yeah.
it. I didn't think all the way through all the ways that that thing could go wrong. And with skim coat work, like I have one guy that's really good at it. Everybody else is like adequate, but adequate adds on like five times the amount of time. Like if you're doing like trying to get level five finish, if you're not really good at it and really know exactly what you're doing, that shit takes forever.
Yeah. So I've well, like when I was younger, when I first started running, like, getting responsibilities in terms of running lead and stuff like that. I worked for a large commercial company, light commercial. Like if you looked up some of the projects in the area I'm in, like Aspen, Trend West, Holiday Hills, Bass Pro, Big Cedar, the Meadows, Mount Vista, they're like all huge, like megalithic timeshare projects and stuff, like multiple year projects.
Is this all for
Um,
one company that you're working for? Or is this different companies?
well, no, not necessarily. Like probably three different companies. When I first started, it was primarily two to three competing companies that did all that work. And then now it's just, they don't build as much as they used to, you know what I mean? So every once in a while you'll see something that goes up, but it's primarily like, a couple houses here or there kind of shit. So they don't, there was like a mass building like in the 90s and
Yeah, that's right.
in early 2000s. But, um, so when I took lead on, this was like my first job, and like we always, sometimes we would get like, hey, you're going to go do this condo, it's just you and one guy and we've got like 30 fucking units, you know what I mean? And that was just kind of how it rolled. But when I did like my first actual job, like running, a bunch of guys, we had this big cedar building. We had about, I think on average it was about 30 guys. And I didn't look at numbers then, you know what I mean? I didn't care about shit like that. I just trained guys and stuff. We did that building, and I think it was like 13 months. It was a big five story building, whatever. The boss had said something about how, he lost on that job or whatever. And he'd had a long standing relationship with that builder, so I'm sure whatever the builder, helped him take care of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But on the second one, we fucking fired everybody and went in with like 7 or 8 guys on average, and we got it done in like 7 or 8 months. You know, and that's a huge. I mean, if you want to look at numbers like strewn out on like a mass
Yeah.
scale and like on a production scale where you get to repeat your process and you can kind of dial shit in. I mean, that's of note. I have no idea the numbers, but
Yeah, and a lot of those projects, like, so for us, if we're doing any commercial work, we're gonna be there for a while. Our first few days, or maybe our first week, is almost like feeling out what our process is gonna be, trying a couple of things differently. And then once we have a system, it's just like go time. If you're on a project for a year, I mean, is that similar? Is that how you would, what would happen on a job like that? In the beginning, much slower, just figuring it out?
No, well, the thing that people have to understand about process is everybody's going to have a different process. So like if you're to be like resilient and like versatile as a painter, you need to know everybody's process. You know what I mean? You need to know multiple processes because it's not every job that you're going to, one of the worst things you can do is learn something and think you have something figured out and always try to apply that same process to everything. Like you can't stick a square peg in a round hole kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys do that though. A lot of guys think they can, my process is the best, and I'm not trying any other ways because I already know it's the best rather than adapting, rather than learning and picking pieces from other people's processes.
Yeah. One of the biggest assets is having done shit so many different ways that when you go to a job and whatever, like your mind's spinning and you're not like, hey, let's experiment on this and let's see how this works and I wonder if that's going to work. Like your mind already, you're already figuring all that shit out. You're going to, like we've discussed this before, like there's three ways to do things, but
Hmm.
you can pull things from that to do, things 100 different ways.
Yeah.
Like you already have it figured out and you're just taking things out, putting things in and, erecting the process like on the fly. So, I mean, if you have a tool set and you've done things multiple different ways, then you can, you don't have to sit there and troubleshoot. Like it's already there. You're
And that's a lot of like pre-planning, right? I mean, you can go through a lot of different scenarios just in your head. When you have a project coming up, it's like, what if I do ceilings first? What if I do walls first? What if I do trim first? You kind of map all that out and see where like the problems are going to happen or where they're most likely going to hold you up. A lot of my guys that work for me don't do that well. And so they'll leave drywall patches for the last day. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this should have been done on like any day but the last day, like even yesterday, all this shit should have been done. Like, it's not going to dry fast enough to finish it in the same day. But they're not thinking through that process. So those are the things I have to keep an eye on personally, for my projects. I know like which things need to get done by a certain day in order to finish by Friday.
Yeah. I'm on a new project right now. Like I've been on it for months. It's an example of, I guess, not necessarily having a process. So when I first when I first bid this job, it was, I was given numbers. We originally were out there because I got a phone call from a lady that, they had all new cedar installed around their house. It's kind of like a rebuild, it's like a demo and a rebuild. This builder's from Arkansas. He's super country and shit. And they take fucking forever. Like you see them sitting in their lawn chairs more than you do anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And dude, it fucking, we went out there. I did a, muriatic acid or not muriatic, oxalic acid wash and, bleaching of all the exterior wood. And it was a big, wood package for how small of a house it was. It fucking must have cost a fortune at the time, but, we did structures on it all. And, fuck, I was in and out in like 3 days. It was like fucking 40 gallons of stain or whatever it was. And, boom, like, hey, they originally they're like, we'd like you to paint the inside of the house. I'm like, okay, we usually don't drive this far away, but, you know, uh, I guess I can give you a price on it. And I wasn't too serious about it because it was weird that this builder didn't have a painter.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I gave him a price. I talked to the builder a little bit too to kind of get an idea of what his painter's pricing was. And dude, in my opinion, the area that I live in, there's not really any like upper echelon companies in terms of quality. So I don't, I've never impressed when I walk into like a multi-million-dollar home and you look around and it's like, dude,
Yeah.
like why do these people put so much work into this shit and then just get the shittiest painters in there, dude? It makes no sense.
Man, that's general contractors all over here. Like I'm in a high dollar area, and you know, any of these new homes like in Newport, if they're doing full remodel or tear down, building spec homes, these things are like 2.5 million plus, you know. And anytime I do bids on these, like I have a friend of mine is a builder, or it's just like his family's company, he's taking it over. Um, but they're always trying to pinch pennies on painting. It's like you're gonna fucking put all this money into building this thing. You're gonna sell it for $2.5 million, and you want to have this price be 35,000 instead of 40,000 for the paint job. It's like why the fuck would you do that? It's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, this house that we're on now, um, it was originally supposed to be just drywall and a flat trim package. I would have went out there, if once the drywall was ready, and fucking spent half a day getting the walls primed and the ceilings finished, and then maybe put fans in it and took lunch and came back and rolled a first coat on the walls, you know what I mean, and then left and came back a month later when they had a trim package ready for me. So that was my original plan, and I priced it to that. So you fast forward like 6, 8 months later, I'm like, dude, when is this fucking house gonna be ready? So I gave the homeowner a courtesy call, and she said, yeah, we've changed some things and yada yada. Dude, this entire house is fucking wood now. Like every square fucking inch of it. And there's nothing that's pre-primed other than this shitty pre-primed trim package that we got. Like, I don't know. Like, it seems like the quality of wood is getting worse as well in terms of whatever factory coatings. They're using like the primer that's on this wood is like fucking, I don't know, like, I can't say quarter inch, but it's like an eighth of an inch thick or 16th of an inch thick, and like you run a vacuum into it and it'll pop a piece of primer off of it or something. It's just shit. So anyway, I looked at this, and with like I said, you have to be able to do things multiple different ways in order to run shit in your head and know what's going to work best, right? And there was just no fucking way to approach this.
Yeah.
There was no way I could approach this job. If I did this first, then I'd have to mask this. If I did that first, then I'd have to mask that. And it was nothing would fucking work. So I just had to fucking just go. So
Is this that project
um,
you did the fine paint syrup on?
yeah, on the cabinets.
Yeah. So this
Yeah.
one fits into a loser job, right? This is
Oh
like
yeah,
a
dude, it's a huge. I if I don't run numbers like you do to where you have analytics for everything. So I'm like, I turn jobs over, and I look at what I have at the end. I'm like, okay, well, I did all right. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I don't look at every little fucking detail because I'm not there yet. You know what I mean? I probably need to start analyzing everything a little bit better. But fuck, I'm so busy with just out there constantly bidding and writing estimates in the evenings and in the field in the daytime, and like
Yeah.
I don't have time to sit down and create a business system for finding out if I lost $100, or you know what I mean,
And
like.
that's tough to do. Like, so that was the same for me. I mean, I spent probably like 12 or 13 years not paying close attention to the numbers. It was only when I brought somebody in, and I still didn't do it myself, but I brought someone into the company that put together a tech system. And then he started tracking all that stuff and then basically just giving me reports on it. But that's also the time when I saw how valuable it was for me, you know? And I think if you're running a small company, it's not so important because there aren't that many moving parts, like it's important if you want to scale up. Like if you want to become a big company or you want to have 10 guys, 20 guys, 30 guys, or girls, um, it's important then because, you know, like once your paint purchases are like $300,000 a year, when your labor is $1 million a year, like that's when all that shit starts adding up like crazy. And so, if you're planning on doing that, you really need to get systems dialed in. If you're planning on staying small forever, like, it doesn't matter that much.
I have a system for everything, and not only do I have a system for everything, but have multiple systems for anything. With this one, where it was different was, we got a completely, you know, raw house. Like the only thing that was pre-primed in this house was the flat trim package and the doors. So the walls are just raw shiplap, and I'm not talking, this is all like fucking framing type lumber, dude. Like the amount of money that they spent on this wood is fucking mind boggling. Just like the exterior fucking car siding, dude. It's fucking 4 inches, or it's 2 inches thick, dude. And like the the wood, the wall material, like it's at least fucking an inch thick. That's fucking insane. And all this shit's shrinking out, blah blah blah. But anyway, so what? Once it turned from, oh hey, we changed our minds, we're putting more wood in here. It was, I want to whitewash it, and then it turned from, well, can you do a whitewash but make it gray? And it's like, no, you can't do that. So I'm sitting there doing like drawdowns and shit, and I'm making samples to try and figure out how I can do a whitewash and give it a gray tone. And everything that I fucked with, you know, there was no there was no method that I could come up with that didn't involve pretty much doing it by hand. I couldn't come up with like a production process. So I decided that I was going to, I came up with a look that she liked. I tried to submit, multiple production processes, but she ended up like choosing the hand done
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, yeah,
So we ended up having to pre sand all this shit. Like the carpenters didn't sand any fucking thing, so then I had to pre sand all the walls and then whitewash them, sand them, fucking antique them with a fucking stain and like grain pull them as the stains tacking and stuff in order to get the look she wanted. Sand them again, clear coat them, sand them, clear coat them, and then fucking then encapsulate all of that shit. And with the way the trim package broke to the walls, like there's no way to caulk it, there's no way to mask it. And what am I, if I slide tape behind the door jambs, is it going to do damage to everything that I just did? So I'm like, fuck, like, how are we going to combat this? So I ended up having to tape the edges of the door jambs and the base and shit. And then we're going to have to just pull it and come back and brush all that shit in by hand. And I thought about it too. Like, well, if I was to have a production method and do all that, like, what would I have done? Maybe shoot the trim. You think, well, hey, you could have shot the trim package first, then bag off the trim package and then do your production process on the walls, right? But then you would have to slide masking behind that trim package in order to protect the walls. It's like a
yeah.
pre-masking.
Right.
What if you fuck up and you get paint on the walls and you
Yeah,
have a line? It's just a fucking nightmare, dude.
yeah,
Yeah, so once the trim package is done, then we have to protect that shit, and then finish encapsulating the walls to do the ceilings, and we have to shellac, do 2 coats of shellac, sand between coats, do 2 coats of finish on the ceilings, yada yada, and it's just a fucking nightmare, dude. And then the cabinets, the not only was the fine paints process a nightmare, just because the shit never dries, which we're gonna have to do a podcast on that. I know
yeah.
you're working over. Are you almost done doing your
No, I
product tests
mean,
and stuff?
so where I'm at right now, I started this on 6 days ago. Today would be day six. Um, so I think I've got like 7 or 8 samples that I'm working on, 7 or 8 doors. I have doors that I ordered a while back. They're just sitting in the shop for other samples. And so I've got 7 or 8 of them. And so 6 days ago, I put primer on one side on everything. Um, and then on some of the door, on 2 or 3 of the doors, I'm doing 1 day dry time between everything. So it's like spray the back sides primer, 1 day dry time. Flip them, spray the front sides primer, 1 day dry time. And then finish coat 1 day dry time. Finish coat 2, 1 day dry time. Flip them, finish 1 day. Flip, finish 2 1 day. So that we'll get into it deep, but and I posted some
Yeah.
pictures, just to mess around with you, but like I can get the finish to look nice, probably on anything, right? Like to make it photograph well.
I could make Property Solutions look like a
Yeah,
diamond, but it
right,
doesn't mean that it's not in a fucking goat's ass,
right,
you know?
yeah, yeah. And that's like this stuff right now. The point I'm at with it is like, there's no way in hell I could do 24-hour dry time between coats on this and like have it work. It's way too soft, like there's not, I don't know.
Would just wait a week later, 2 weeks later, not
Well,
going to
and
be
that's the
any
thing,
different.
right? That so some of the samples I have, we're going to give it a week,
Yeah.
2 weeks, do sanding tests on them. So we're still a couple weeks out, so I can get like a full spectrum of maybe like 2 or 3 week period between first primer coat.
There's multiple things to test with that too. It's not only, hey, how much damage are your racks going to do to it after you flip, right? It's also, hey, is it going to sand any better after 2 weeks? You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I sit there and I fight with myself the shit that I've let dry for 2 weeks, which is fucking ridiculous, by the
Yeah.
way. You should
Yeah.
you should never have to fucking be forced to do that.
Yeah.
But the shit that I have let set for 2 weeks, it still doesn't fucking powder.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
still gets damaged on the fucking racks.
Yeah, and
Like,
so I'm curious to see because we know some guys that use this product and they love it,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
stands well for them. So I'm curious to see if it's just the
I
amount
think
of
it's the
tint.
color, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is it just
I
the
think
amount
it's
of
the
tint?
fact that my assessment is that it is the fact that the product's missing the drying agents and it's the color. So it's essentially how much tint is in it,
Yeah,
and
yeah. And I think ultimately I'll do samples with just a white primer, no tint, and at least vet that out because I don't want to give like just a one-sided opinion on it, but I'll definitely give an
well,
opinion on
it
this
it
color
is
and
one
how it's
sided
working.
though, because FPE's not like, hey, you guys,
Right.
um this product, they're like, this product is viable for cabinets, it's amazing,
Yeah.
blah
Yeah.
blah fucking blah. They're not like, hey guy, don't use this color in it.
Right.
No, they don't tell you that shit. They just want to make that fucking outrageous sell.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, we're gonna get deep in that in a couple,
Yeah,
probably in two or
yeah,
three
that,
weeks.
that this is getting us off track, but so
We're already going
anyway,
on it.
to my current fuck up.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've explained my current job a little bit, but like I said, I don't track numbers like you do. I've been in business for about 3 years. I've been in the field for about 27. And my biggest deal, going all the way through with my background, was just always winning. You know what I mean? And every once in a while, you fucking lose or whatever. But, my deal was just always fucking winning, always seeking advancement and shit like that, and always trying to impress. And,
Yeah.
um, when you're running large companies and large jobs, like, I didn't want to be low guy on the totem pole, so I don't know what it was that always fucking drove me. But I take a lot of that mentality into being in business for myself, but the biggest difference is, I don't want to fuck with new construction anymore unless it pays well. So my focus is quality and getting it up, as quick as we can. But having said that, like, I am in a unique situation with this job. I've never technically lost,
Hmm.
until now.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it's fucked.
What do you think you're in the hole on this project right now?
Dude, like I said, I don't track numbers the way that you do. So I, the best that I can look at it is like, hey, I got to draw from this job. I got to draw from that job. And the reason, I got like a $16,000 draw for one job, but the reason I did it was in advance of the price increases coming up, So I was just trying to save money on materials because it was a large order, like 100 gallons of fucking duration and, like 80 gallons of, A100 fast dry alkyd primer. Um, so I think I got that materials draw, and then I added a few grand to it. So I pulled a few grand out of that to throw into the business account. And then I did a weekend job It was like 4 grand. I did it on a Saturday and a Sunday.
So are we talking like a couple $100, $500 under on this one? thousand
No,
bucks.
dude. So I'm like I've dumped $7,000 of
Shit.
my own money into it, and then I finally had to leave. I like, dude, I can't, because not only is sitting there like being, I don't know what you would think, like maybe I might be what can only be described as like maybe being 2 months beyond what I would have projected,
Fuck.
right? When I
Yeah.
bid this job, it was like I knew, so it was a rebid. I had to rebid the fucking job, so that kind of fucked me up. But when I was looking at the numbers, I was like, or talking to the customers as well, I was like, I really don't know how to price this. It really needs to be an hourly job. So um, they're super nice people and shit, and I was just trying to be I was just trying to give them a set price. I
Mhm.
didn't want them to
Right.
feel like we're on the job, just
Just dragging
loading
it
fucking
out.
hours on there. And it fucking, I think it probably would have looked like that too. You
Right.
know,
Right.
like being, like I said, what can only be described as like a month fucking behind, month and a half behind, maybe even fucking 2 months. Um,
And there's a lesson in there too, right? Like one part of this question is what do you take away from it? Sometimes it's tough to look at that and give them like an accurate number because you're like you guys aren't slow. You don't waste time. And if you looked at what you actually would have had to charge, it's like, damn, like I got to tell them it's going to be $110,000 to do this project, instead
yeah,
of
that,
60 or 70 or whatever. Like, that's a
yeah.
big
And
number.
I'm already huge on, like, when I repriced it, I repriced it at like fucking $14 a square foot, dude. And then I talked to the builder, and the way I got stuck with the cabinets is he told me that, hey, you're doing the cabinets. My cabinet painter can't do them because he had open heart surgery. So I'm like, fuck, dude. And then they came and they stuck all the cabinets on the fucking walls, on my finished walls. And some of them weren't finished, so I had to finish my walls up to them, and then, protect my walls and do the cabinets. And like I said, that was no small feat, because you have a groove between,
Oh,
all the shiplap. Some of the cabinets in the trim package fits tight to the shiplap. Some of it sits off of it, so you're having to run critical masking up tight. Some slide behind it. Then you have to put like shit inside the grooves so
yeah.
overspray doesn't go in the grooves. It's a fucking nightmare, dude.
Jeez.
And well, so I asked the builder, like, well, what was your fucking, painter gonna do the cabinets for? And this is where I really fucked this job up, was, and he said, well, seven grand. I was like, all right, I guess I'll match his price. And the reason I said that was because I thought in my head, well, $14 a square foot is pretty fucking high. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, if I lose a little on the cabinets, whatever.
Right.
So once the cabinets are installed, I'm like, dude, this is way more fucking cabinets than what they told me,
Yeah.
right? So I went through and did all my linear foot measurements, and I was like $12,000 in the negative on just on the cabinets. So I got the homeowners to increase the price on the cabinets, and that was, sure, it's my fault or whatever, but it was a miscommunication between, I should have never told, I should have
Yeah.
just priced the fucking shit, dude.
Yeah.
So what my hope was by increasing the price on the cabinets, that will, finish funding the rest of the project, right? But like I said, I've dumped three, four, five, six, $7,000 or $8,000 into this job, as well as I've been paying, I don't know, a fucking month worth of labor on it. I have, and then material that I have to keep buying. I'm probably $12,000 upside down, and I could probably have Jeremiah there for another fucking month if I wanted.
So at this point, like you just got to figure out how to stop the bleeding, right? Like how
Yeah.
to keep prices down on whatever else you got to do. Um, Are you going to recoup any of that money?
it's a morale killer too.
Oh yeah.
And that's another one of those things we're driving 2.5 hours a day to go lose fucking money, and
Right.
your morale is just dying.
It
You know?
builds character. So that was
Yeah.
like the Skimco project we had was like fuck, it just kept dragging on and on and on. And I just kept telling all the guys that work on it, like, look, in 6 months it's just gonna be a memory. You know, it's not gonna be affecting our day to day at all anymore. It'll just be a memory. There's no other way to get through it.
Yeah, what I learned from it though, I guess technically, is I will never fucking price, a job like that again and put a set price on it. What I usually do, and this pretty much prices me out of new construction in terms of custom homes. I submit a base footage price, wall ceilings trim. You know what I mean? That's ceilings, walls, your trim and doors. If you got crank out windows, it's fucking extra. You got closet shelving, it's extra. You got accent walls, it's extra. If you're beyond 3 colors, it's extra. Anything beyond wall ceilings trim, it's extra. And that saves my ass in terms of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of extras.
Yeah.
So, because new residential is not like commercial production or, heavy commercial industrial maintenance. We don't technically get finish schedules, Like if you paint a school, dude, everything's going to be laid out in
Right.
front of you on the prints. You can, you get your own copy of prints, or you go into the job trailer every morning and it lays everything out for you in fucking black and white. Houses aren't like that. For some reason, residential builders aren't like that, but
Yeah, that is odd that residential builders don't do that. Like we'll get on our blueprints, there would be a paint schedule, but they don't hold to that. You know, it's like they can change whenever, and it doesn't change on blueprints or anything like that. In commercial, that's a change everybody has to sign off on.
the biggest thing I took away from this is it kind of lined up with a job that I'd been waiting on for months. The current cabin, that's the Centurion. Very similar job in the fact that every square inch of the house is wood. So, they wanted like a roundabout number. I told them, hey, this is a little much for me to put a set price on it, but it's going to be hourly. If you guys don't, trust us or whatever to do it, I mean, that's fine. Like, we're productive in what we do, but if you want to go ahead and get different pricing, that's fine by us. But I can't roll the dice on it. So, um, I when I wrote it up, I gave them a projection of materials and hours. I gave them a projection of set costs, but I said, it would be my hope that we can be under this, but we can very well go over. So everything will be tracked hourly. So that's what I learned from it, was don't fucking roll the dice on something that you're not 100% dead set on. You know, and the thing with running math, like I could bid a fucking, 1 million square foot fucking condo, right? And just by crunching numbers, know exactly how much material I'm going to use, know exactly how I'm going to come out and all that shit. But I wasn't able to take a little 3,500 square foot fucking house and bid it after getting the extras on the cabinets. I'm technically at like $17 a fucking square foot, and make money on it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, but that's it. So the type of work that you're doing there, you know, you had posted photos and stuff along the way of the stain finishes you're doing there, the fine paints of Europe stuff. You're talking like high end finishes. You know, I mean, if you bring those finishes to where I live, like I'm charging a shit ton of money for that. You know, because it's all custom, it's all like hand done stuff. We charge a lot of money for that. You know, like we did a garage door this last week for 4 grand. You know, just a refinish on a garage door.
Yeah, I don't think though necessarily that product dictates quality. I mean, I could have done the same thing to this house, like with the FPE shit. I could have put property solutions on these fucking cabinets and probably had an easier fucking time in terms of being constricted to my process. And if the FPE shit has no fucking sense of durability, then what the fuck is the point of
Right.
$160 per 3 quarts? But
Yeah.
um, yeah, like. I don't think product dictates quality. Like there's a lot of mid-range products out there that fucking are extremely durable. But in terms of, yes, the coatings or whatever, like it's the process that is dictating, this being a fucking, higher price job or whatever, but it's not necessarily the product.
Yeah. All right. Um, let's get off of the bad shit and talk about insanely profitable jobs. Um, what do I have? I've got this big project we did a few years ago. Um, I think I talked a little bit with you and Sam about this big lacquer project. Family paid all cash for us, like $130,000 job, and that one was great. Like, boy, I probably made like 40 grand on that job. Took a month. Um, but we got a lot of equipment out of it. I picked up a couple extra sprayers to be spraying lacquer all at the same time, some scaffolding, so we got some equipment out of it and then a bunch of cash. It was really awkward on what to do with the cash, because like for the guys, I could pay some of the guys straight, and they liked it. But the other cash I had to either, save some and stock it away or deposit it in small increments. But that project, so that one I treated like in a way, um, after learning from mistakes on some of these horror store jobs, we priced it high. It was so much work to be done in this house, and the house was huge, and it was just finished work everywhere. And like in the entry area, the foyer, the ceilings were 20 feet high, 22 feet high, and it's floor to ceiling wainscoting, paneling. They had like dental molding in a couple of the formal dining rooms, all kinds of stuff everywhere, and just figuring out how you're going to get completely smooth finishes, no breaks at all on, like the from the entryway to the kitchen. It was just a straight shot. Like you get, they had an ocean view at the end. Like it was like a $15 million house in Newport Beach. So nice place. Um, but the hallway to go from entry to kitchen was like 60 feet. It was like a long hallway, and then it's paneling down all the walls on all the sides. So my thought going into it is like I need to have wiggle room. I need to have room to fix mistakes. I need to have room to, like, if we spray panels out and it doesn't look great, then we're going to do it again. And I need to have a budget to be able to do that, to make those calls and say, hey, whatever it takes, that's what we're doing. If we have a little booger on a panel, we're not trying to like just sand it out and touch up a small little area and see if we can get away with it. No, we're respraying the panel, and so that was through the whole house. Um, and so when all is said and done, it was like we were left with a lot of profit, but we did really high end work there, and we didn't spare any expenses. We didn't cut any corners, but we had the budget for it. Like that's one big thing that I've learned over time with me wanting to deliver quality is I got to have a budget for it. And if I have
Yeah.
excess money, it's like, all right, we can do whatever we want here.
So, most of, like in terms of huge profits, most of that would be a question for the guys that I've ran logistics for and stuff over the years, running jobs, in the millions of dollars and stuff. But for myself, there's not really anything of note. You know what I mean? Like I've got a lot of personal stuff going on, so I got a lot of money going out, and I can't really accurately look at my numbers in terms of huge profits. But I know that I've been, inherently profitable. This is really the only job in 3 years that I've done bad on, and if ever I were to look at a job that I have done previously for myself, it was never, never in the negative. I was always in the black. But
Yeah. But you have projects like on that structures project, wasn't that like high price and short turnaround time?
which one?
I thought you did
Oh,
like
well,
a big ceiling project or something like that, or covered
oh
patio.
yeah, yeah. I did. Yeah, that was like a $8,000 job in like 3 days. I went ahead and I gave the homeowners like I want to say like a several $100 refund on product projections. And then like believe it or not, like one of the the first job I did when I opened up shop was a 60 unit hotel I did in 40 days. And then I did some new apartments when I started hiring guys. And like, dude, my only concern was getting money flowing. I know that like shitty commercial painters, in production at the time of me having started, were probably in the $1.90 to $2.10 range. I did this apartment for $1.75. I had myself and Raymond and a new apprentice. We did the job in less than 30 days, and um, I bought a $10,000 boat and still had 10 grand in the bank. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's not bad.
that's not bad. But the only reason I was able to turn a profit like that is just because I have systems in place for shit like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you also know how to drive people, because that's like, so I have some systems in place, but I also need a driver on site. Like if I was on site every day, or if I wanted to like maximize production out of a project, I would need to be on site every day. Like that would be the only way that I could get the most out of all my people on a project is to be there every day, probably working with them, increase morale, and then also keeping an eye on like the flow of the project. Because a lot of my guys won't be able to like delegate well enough. If you have 10 guys on a project, there have to be really specific directions for each person so that we're not losing a little bit of time every day. You can really maximize time and efficiency as long as someone is there to drive it.
I agree.
As always, please like our YouTube page, give us 5-star only reviews on all podcast platforms. If you have questions or comments, send them over to hello@paintsniffers.com or on Instagram @paint_sniffers.
You can also watch the video version of the podcast on the Alpha Painting YouTube page. Go to playlists and it will be filed under Paint Sniffer Podcast. Via YouTube, you can write into QA@paintsniffer.com.
Thank you for listening to Paint Sniffer Podcast.